This is Unit 4, Lesson 6, Two-Way Frequency Tables. And our objective is students will be able to create and use a two-way frequency table to interpret data. Two-way frequency tables are something that you did in Math 8, so they are a bit of a review, but these will go a little more in depth, maybe not more in depth, but it won't be quite as straightforward as it was when you did them last year. So first, let's go over a few different terms. The first one is obviously a two-way frequency table. A two-way frequency table is a table of data that separates responses by characteristics. So for example, you might take a survey of males and females and you're asking them what their favorite color is between orange and blue. So you would have the number of males who responded orange, the number of males responding blue, the number of females responding orange, and females responding blue. So we have the characteristics, which are orange and blue, and then we have it separated into male and female. Our next term is trend. T-R-E-N-D, and a trend is just a pattern in the data. When we create a two-way frequency table, we are looking for trends to see if there's something that most people like or something that's more effective than another thing. Next, we have joint frequency. And joint frequency is the number of responses for a given characteristic. So, for example, it's all the individual responses that you will see on a two-way frequency table. Our next vocabulary term is marginal frequency. And marginal frequency is a little bit different than the joint frequency. Joint frequencies look at individual values on the table, while marginal frequencies look at the total number of times certain responses were given. So it's looking at the total in a row or the total in a column. So it's the sum of an entire row or an entire column. And our final term is the conditional relative frequency. Conditional relative frequency is expressed as a percentage or decimal, and it allows you to compare multiple responses on a table. So you could be looking at one single value compared to that column, compared to the row, or compared to the whole table. Or you might look at a column compared to the whole table, or a row compared to the whole table. Next, we're going to take a look at an example of a two-way frequency table so we can actually pick out the joint frequency, marginal frequency, and the conditional relative frequency. So we have this table that's comparing gender, male and female, to the preference of baseball, soccer, and basketball. So I've already conducted this survey and gathered all of the responses, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this table in now. So there were 49 males who preferred baseball, 23 females who preferred baseball, 52 males preferred soccer, 64 females preferred soccer, 16 males preferred basketball, and 33 females preferred basketball. So we talked about the joint frequency on that previous slide. The joint frequency is the number of responses for a given characteristic. So 16 would be the joint frequency, or the amount of times that males said they preferred basketball. 33 is the joint frequency, or it's the number of times that females said they preferred basketball. Next, we have the marginal frequency. Marginal frequency is going to be the total of a column or a row. So if I want to know how many people like soccer, I would add 52 plus 64. And that would tell me the marginal frequency. If I wanted to know how many females were polled, I could add 23, 64, and 33. That would also be a marginal frequency because we're looking at the row, when here we were looking at the column. Finally, we have conditional relative frequency. This is found by doing A divided by A plus B. A is kind of what you're looking for, and A plus B is what we are comparing it against. So, for example, let's say I want to know the conditional relative frequency of males who prefer baseball. So what I'm looking for is males who prefer baseball, which is 49, and I'm comparing it to all the males. So there were 49 males who preferred baseball, 52 who preferred soccer, and 16 who preferred basketball. So when I add those all together, I get 49 males who prefer baseball divided by 117 males. And when I round this to the thousandths place, I get 0.419, which can also be converted to the decimal 41.9%. So I know that 41.9% of males prefer baseball. Let's say I want to know how many people who prefer soccer are female. So if I'm looking at people who like soccer and I'm looking at females, this is the number that I'm looking for, the 64. So I'm trying to find out how many females like soccer out of all the people who like soccer. Well, all the people that like soccer are 64 females plus 52 males. So that turns into 64 over 116, which will give me 0.552. It's 5517, but I'm going to round that up to 552, or in other words, 55.2%. Now, if I wanted to know what is the joint frequency of male students who prefer soccer. Well, joint frequency is just the individual value. So that's going to give me 52. The marginal frequency of people who prefer baseball would be 49 plus 23. So that's going to give me 72. So remember, marginal frequency is when we're adding rows or we're adding columns. Joint frequency is just the individual values like that 52. And then conditional relative frequency is when we are taking one value, like we did right here, 64, and we're comparing it against something else. You're going to use these 5 different vocabulary terms that we talked about, and we're going to use a table of data to be calculating joint frequency, marginal frequency, and conditional relative frequency, and then picking out trends in the data.